Welcome. Glad you all are here. Welcome to Trinity, whether you're here in person or online. I want to say welcome. So it is March Madness. How are your brackets? Yeah, that's what I thought. I'm kind of a Big Ten fan. Anybody else a Big Ten fan? Okay, so because of that, I lean into the Big Ten for the entire way. I'm committed to it. So last night I had Purdue winning. That's not so much. That was rough. That was really rough that Purdue lost, and they lost big. They didn't show up for the second half, it looked like. So anyway, it's really a humbling experience because my family, we do the brackets, okay? So how many of you filled out a bracket this year? Raise your hand if you filled out a bracket. Okay, good. It's awesome. And I was in first place, for a long time until last night. Right, and now I'm in fifth place in my family, and all my daughters and my daughter-in-laws are in front of me. And so I started talking to them. I was how are y'all doing so great with these brackets? You don't watch any games. You don't have any idea what these teams are about. And several years ago, my daughters used to pick based on their mascot. Another daughter picked on their colors. Right? And so I'm winning it every year. This is awesome. And last year I didn't win, and this year I am not winning. And I'm what's the difference? Dad, we're using ChatGPT to pick our brackets. Is that even, that just seems unfair, doesn't it? Man alive, wow. So I'm in fifth place now with our family. We'll see what happens after today. Again, I got Duke and Michigan today. So we'll see what happens. All right. Anyway, we are diving into our spiritual disciplines once again. And today is about service, the spiritual discipline of service. And so that's the direction we are going. And so the title is The Hidden Power of a Servant's Life. The hidden power of a servant's life. The world says, make a name for yourself. Jesus says, give your life away. Isn't that a contrast? The discipline of service is where this tension becomes real. I even think about, since we've been talking about basketball, I even thinking about how our athletes love to receive glory. Okay? They beat their chests when they dunk over somebody. They love the applause of the crowd, right? But service and the life of Christ is different. It's a different economy. It's different priorities. And so when we talk about service, it's not just about what we do in serving, it's about who we become. And we should be becoming more like Jesus. And nowhere is this clear when we look in Mark chapter 10, verses 42 through 45. And so kind of read silently along with me as we follow along here with this passage of scripture in Mark chapter 10. You see, Jesus called them together and said, you know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles, they lord it over them. And their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. So here's the big idea for today. If you're taking notes, here's the big idea. We become like Christ when we embrace a life of humble, spirit-empowered service for the glory of God and the good of others. Okay? I'm going to read this again. It's on the screen. We become like Christ when we embrace a life of humble, spirit-empowered service for the glory of God and the good of others. Some of you maybe remember the story of Eric Liddell. Okay, there's a movie that depicted his life in 1981. Okay, many of you weren't even born then. Okay, in 1981, there was a movie called Chariots of Fire. Do y'all remember that movie? Yeah. Okay, what an incredible movie that was, right? And it depicted the life of Eric Liddell. You see, Eric Liddell was the fastest man in Great Britain. In fact, he won the 100, 200, and 400 leading up to the Olympics for that country of Great Britain. He was a Scottish man. And so Eric Liddell in the 1924 Paris Olympics was going to run the 100, and yet his convictions told him otherwise, because they ran the prelims of the 100 on a Sunday. And so he pulled out. He pulled out. Wow, that's a contrast to our day, isn't it? So many different events are on Sundays nowadays. Even our different kids' sporting events are on Sundays. And we face this tension all the time in our own families. But in 1924 Paris Olympics, Eric Liddell went with his convictions, and he pulled out of the 100-yard dash. Instead, he ran the 400, which was not one of his better events. And he won. He won the gold medal, set an Olympic record and a world record while doing it. And what an incredible story that was. And so here the world celebrated him. He had everything. He had fame, he had honor, he had opportunity. But many don't realize what happened next. Do you remember what was next in his life? You see, his parents were missionaries in China, so he actually grew up in China. And so he went back to China after the Paris Olympics. He goes back to China as a missionary, serving the poor, teaching, discipling, loving people far from the spotlight. And during World War II, he was placed in a Japanese internment camp, and the conditions were brutal. Yet witnesses say he continued to serve, organizing games for children, giving away his food, encouraging the weak, living out Christ daily. They even did a prisoner exchange. And because he was famous, Great Britain tried to get Eric Liddell out of that prison camp. And he refused. And instead, he gave his spot to a woman who was pregnant. And he stayed in that prison camp. And in 1945, he died in that camp from a brain tumor. You see, no medals, no crowds, just a life poured out like a drink offering. Why would a man give up everything? Because he believed what Jesus said in Mark 10:45, that true greatness is not found in being served, but is found in serving. So this is the first point, okay? The first point is that true greatness is found in serving others. We see in Mark 10, once again, we've already read the passage, but we see whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. Whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. If you want to become great, become a servant. Wow, that sure is different from our world. If you want to become great, then be a servant. Serve others. Put others before yourself. You see, Jesus completely redefines greatness. In the world, greatness equals power, status, and being served. Yet in the kingdom of God, his economy is different. Greatness equals humility, sacrifice, and serving others. And the big principle is this. In God's kingdom, greatness is measured by serving. And this is not optional. It is the pathway to greatness. It is by serving others. So what's the application? What's the thing we take home from this particular point? It's this. Where can you serve in this church? Where can you serve in this church? Children's ministry? Volunteer in the nursery? What about youth ministry on Sunday night? Can you come and help lead our students and maybe be a small group leader? Maybe it's being part of the prayer ministry and just showing up to pray. Or maybe it's being part of the men's ministry or the women's ministry, or maybe it's just like, you know what? I would like to just show up and say, how can I be used? I'm just volunteering. I'm just giving of myself, and I want to serve. The second question is, where can you serve in the community? What does that look like? Can you volunteer somewhere? Can you help coach your kids' sports or maybe your grandkids' sports? What does it look like? For me, I was an athlete, and so one way I could serve is simply to coach my kids' sports. Even sports I was no good at, right? I mean, I was terrible at some of these sports. I didn't know a single thing, but I just volunteered, right? Because they're desperate for people to volunteer. Oh, I can remember, when we moved to Bartlesville, Oklahoma, and our oldest, Trey, was 10 years old, and he got invited to be on a travel baseball team. Okay, we really didn't know what that meant. These travel teams, boy, were we introduced fast at 10 years old, right? These travel teams, oh my goodness, they like take your life away. Some of you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? He was 10, and in Oklahoma, the weather's a little bit better than Indiana, so they started practicing in January, and then he started playing in March, and we played all the way through July, got the month of August off, woo! And then picked back up in September and played again. At the age of 10, they were playing like 50 to 60 games a year. I'm like, what in the world? And not only does it take your time, it takes something else. Yeah. Your money. Doesn't it? And so when they were 13 and 14, I volunteered to coach the team. We quickly realized that since Trey was the oldest, we could not do this with all of our kids. You know what I'm saying? And we just tugged our little family all over the state of Oklahoma and to the World Series in St. Louis and all these different places. And oh my goodness. But I served. And when are all these tournaments, by the way? On the weekends, including Sundays? Yes. And so we had a Bible study on Sunday mornings and invited anyone to come, parents, players. And guess what happened? Everybody showed up. No one ever missed. Go and serve. What does it look like? What's it look like to serve here at Trinity? In some capacity. What does it look like to serve in our community? In some capacity. Go and serve. Secondly, service begins with the example of Jesus. You see, Jesus doesn't just redefine greatness, he modeled it. Back to Mark 10:45, it says, "For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many." You see, he declares his mission to serve and to give his life away. Now, these were not just words for Jesus, right? He didn't just say that. He modeled it. He implemented it. He lived that way. And in John chapter 13, Jesus, the Son of God, wraps a towel around his waist and he washes the disciples' feet. This was reserved for the lowliest of servants in the home. And yet he's the one who did that. In fact, Peter said, no, don't do this. Don't do this. And Jesus said, no, I need to wash your feet. Let me. And of course, Peter is like all or nothing, right? So he says, go ahead and wash my whole body then. He's like, no, I just need to wash your feet. It's okay. Calm down, Peter. He didn't just make a statement. He didn't just say it. He lived it. He modeled it. In fact, he says, I have set for you an example that you should do as I have done. Now, some people are uncomfortable with this. But Friday, or Thursday night, which one? We're going to wash feet. we're going to wash feet. You might want to wash your feet before you come. Okay. I've done this at youth camps, and it's really uncomfortable. Middle school boys who haven't taken a shower all week. You know what I'm saying? And it gets to be Thursday night, and we're washing feet, and it's really a sacrifice for leaders at that point as they're pulling off their dirty socks, and it's like, woo, it hits you like a wave. It hits you. It's a sacrifice. And yet this is what Jesus did. You see, the towel is the training ground for the cross. The towel is the training ground for the cross. The principle here, we serve because Jesus served. Richard Foster writes, service banishes us to the mundane, the ordinary, the trivial. Yet that's where Jesus lived, and that is where we find Jesus today. What's our application? If Jesus picked up a towel, then no act of service is beneath us. I have set an example for you to do as I have done for you. Number 3, our service is to God. When we look in Colossians chapter 3, verses 23 and 24, it says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. You see, before we serve people, we actually serve God. Now, this has been a good reminder for me for some of the places I've worked. Okay? Yes, even though I've always worked in Christian organizations, whether that is a Christian college or a Christian camp or a church or whatever that case might be, I still had some bosses that weren't all that great. Okay? I remember one time I was working in a Christian organization, and we're looking at some of the finances, and I just asked a simple question. I really didn't know what the answer was, but there's something about the finances that seemed a little off for me. It just didn't look quite right. And I just questioned, I said, hey, what about this expenditure here? What is that about? And my leader, my boss, said this. This was his response. Don't ever question me. I am the benevolent monarch here. I'm like, whoa, okay. Well, that's interesting. Now, my fleshly response was, and I'm going to have you meet Jesus right now. Okay? That's my fleshly response. You know what I'm saying? And then I'm reminded of this verse. I don't really serve men. I don't really serve humans. Oh, I mean, I do, but that's not why I work. Right? We're working for the Lord. And when we have this mindset, our work can become a form of worship. You see this? Our work that seems mundane and trivial and sometimes hard, and sometimes we say, you know what, God, you can take this job and shove it where the sun doesn't shine. And yet our work can become a form of worship because as we work unto the Lord, we bring him glory. That makes all the difference in the world, doesn't it? It gave me some sanity in that moment, right? So this changes everything. It changes the way we work, the way we lead, the way we serve in hidden places, and even unseen acts become sacred when they're done unto the Lord. So what's the principle? All service is ultimately directed to God and for God. Dallas Willard taught that the ordinary moments of life become the primary arena of spiritual formation when it's lived before God. You see, the ordinary moments of life is forming us. It's shaping us. And can we turn these things over to Jesus and live Christianly, even when our boss says, do not question me. I am benevolent monarch here. Application. We are not just serving people we are serving Christ. Number 4, true service flows from humility, not recognition. True service flows from humility, not recognition. Jesus warns in Matthew 6, don't serve to be seen. Richard Foster says, the flesh whines against service, but it screams against hidden service. Whoa. Let me read that again. The flesh whines against service, but it screams against hidden service. What's the principle? The purity of our service is revealed in secrecy. Again, Dallas Willard reminds us that disciplines expose whether we desire applause or transformation. I can remember I'm coaching the men's tennis team at Indiana Wesleyan. And we had a young, exuberant freshman. And he's awesome. I love him. I love him so much. In fact, he's now pastoring at a church in Michigan. I love him. But in his freshman, immature self, right? And we're playing in the conference finals. We actually had about 500 people out at the tennis courts watching this match, right? And I can remember it came down to his match. And he hits this great shot, right? And the crowd goes nuts. And he turns to the crowd and he goes, come on! He beats his chest, turns to the crowd, gets them all hyped up and worked up. And I'm like, oh, Isaac, we need to have a conversation. Conversation about humility. A conversation about how to win graciously. A conversation about how do you actually serve your opponent in the middle of a match. And he learned that. He learned how to play, yes, with great exuberance and energy and passion, but then also how to serve his opponent. In fact, at one time, we encouraged our athletes to do this after the end of the match, to shake their hands and then say, great match, and say, how can I pray for you? How can I pray for you? And a lot of times they're taken back by that. In a sporting event, how can I pray for you? Are you kidding me? In one of those situations, one of our players, his name is Grant. And Grant now coaches tennis at Liberty. And he did it with one of his opponents, and his opponent was going through a really hard time. And even though Grant won the match, this guy pours out his heart to Grant. And so Grant just reaches over the net, puts his arm around him, and just prays for him. That kid now coaches at Kentucky. Grant coaches at Liberty, and they played each other. And he goes up to Grant. He says, Grant, do you remember when we played? He says, yeah, it was a classic match, man. It was a battle. He says, yeah, but you know what I remember about that? Is when you asked me, how can I pray for you? And man, I was struggling. And you reached over that net and you prayed for me. And I want you to know, I am now a Christian. I'm a believer and I'm following Jesus. And Grant tears started streaming down his face. It's like, brother, that's the greatest news I've heard. Thank you for sharing that. We never know what our simple, humble acts of service will do for people. We have no idea. What's the application? Find a place to serve where only God sees. We don't serve for the applause. We serve for the pleasure of God. Even in the quiet, unseen places. Number 5. Service is stewarding what God has given us. What has God given you? What is it He has given us? And we serve in that capacity. In fact, 1 Peter 4:10 says, each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. And so whatever gifts God has given us, whether it's spiritual gifts or other skills or other gifts, we're to use it actually to serve other people. It's not for our own good. It's actually for the good of others. And we don't own our gifts, we steward them. We are a steward of our gifts, our time, our words, our resources, our experiences. And so the principle is service is faithfully using what God has entrusted to you for the good of others. Foster again writes, service that blesses others is service that flows from a life centered upon God. What's the application? Stop asking if you have enough. Start using what you've been given. How many times do you or I say, I'm not good enough? I can't do that. Go and serve anyway. But God. Remember Moses? But God. I can't speak well. But God. Pharaoh wants me dead. But God. And he comes up with all these excuses. And God says, I am enough. Go and serve. I am enough. So I'm playing tennis at Indiana Wesleyan University, and my best friend, his name is Jay Smithley, and Jay and I were born one day apart at Marion General Hospital. And so we kind of grew up together, and we played tennis together, at Marion High School, and then we both went to Indiana Wesleyan University, and we played tennis there. And one season we said, we need to use what God has given us. God has given us this gift of playing tennis. How can we bring him glory? And so we made up this warm-up jersey, because we have to wear the school jersey when the match begins. But we made this warm-up jersey, and on the back of that jersey, it simply said, I'm serving for the Lord. You get that, tennis? Just in case it went over your head, right? Okay, so on the back of the jersey, it just said, I'm serving for the Lord. And we made sure when you go out to the tennis courts, what we do is then wherever the crowd was, we want to make sure our back was to the crowd as we're warming up so they could see that, just as a testimony of whose we are and who are we playing for. And there's times that if you know anything about tennis, on the odd games, you switch sides. And so when we switch sides, I would let my opponent to walk out to the court first, because one of the things that's classic about tennis is, one person would put your stuff on one side of the court, and the other person, because they're the enemy, they put their stuff, their towel and their water, and on the other side of the court. But I would wait and see which side of the court they would put their stuff, and then I would put my stuff right beside them. So that when we switch sides, I would just sit there and talk to them. That's something you don't do in tennis. You're toweling off, you're sweat, you're getting a drink of water, and I'd say, hey, how's it going? They look at me like, why are you talking to me? What do you believe about God? Oh, in my immaturity, I even said stuff like, if you were to die, like on this tennis court, where would you go, heaven or hell? That was my evangelistic tools as a college student. I don't know. At the end of the season, we went to this massive tournament. It was all the schools in the state of Indiana, and we played at North Central High School. They have 27 courts there at North Central High School, and so that's where the tournament was played. And there was 21 different schools. There was 150, 60 players a part of this. And so here, Jay and I are wearing our little uniform. Right? I'm serving for the Lord. And before every match, we would kneel down. Before the match on the court, we kneel down and we just pray, God, help me to play my best. But more importantly, may I be a witness and example of Christ's likeness, and help me to bring you glory today. And that's what we pray. Okay? There's another guy that showed up from a different school that showed up at this tournament. Okay? And he was about 6'3", 250 pounds. He didn't look like a tennis player. He looked like a middle linebacker. He had super long hair. He wore this headband it was an AC/DC headband. You remember that band?
Yeah.
Yep. Some of you remember it too well. Just saying. Highway. Okay? And so he had this AC/DC headband. He had on his arm, in his left arm, he wrote with a Sharpie, "Kick Donkey." It wasn't the word donkey. It was something similar to that. Are y'all tracking?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure. On a Sharpie on this end, on this arm, he wrote the first name of the opponent in the first round. And when he beat that opponent, he would mark out that name. And then he'd write the opponent in the second round, and then he would mark out that name. And so as the tournament progressed, he instead of, us kneeling down and praying, he would do his own little demonstration. And I'm not kidding you. I've just never seen it. This is not tennis, right? And he would he'd work himself up, and he'd kind of pace back on the court. Kill him, smash him, destroy him. I was a little frightened. He wore his own little jersey as a warm-up jersey, and it said, "Go to HE double hockey stick." About the middle of the tournament, there was this deck that overlooked the 27-court tennis complex. And I'm near the front of the deck, and there was probably, 25, 30 different players on the deck watching the matches that were being played. And so I'm leaning over and looking at the matches. And then I got my little jersey on, right? I'm serving for the Lord. And I hear someone reading it out loud, mocking me. And it's this guy. 6'3", 250 pounds. I'm serving for the Lord. Whatever. What a joke. I knew I had to do something because everything turned silent. All eyes were watching me. And so, of course, I turned around and just decked him. No, I didn't do that. I didn't do that because he would have killed me. That's why. So I turned around and I just said, "Yes, I'm a servant of Jesus." You got that right. Turn back around like this. And I'm like, it's coming. He's going to hit me. I'm dead. And if I remember that moment when I said that and just looked at him just squarely in the eyes, not backing down, just confirming it, he's like, "Oh, okay, all right, man, all right, no problem." That's what I thought. No, I didn't say that either. Gets down to the end of the tournament. 2 players remaining. This guy and my friend Jay. And this is the scene I witnessed. Go to AC/DC headband. Kick donkey. His arm is filled with names crossed out. Jay's name's at the bottom. Kill him, smash him, destroy him. Jay, 5'7", 120 pounds. I'm serving for the Lord. Dear Jesus, help me to play my best, but more importantly, help me not to get killed. And give me the strength and courage to follow you, to serve you, and to bring you honor and glory. You see, when Jay would hit a good shot, the guy would try to cuss Jay out. When Jay would hit a good shot, there was birdies flying all over the place, as in these birdies. One thing you don't know about this story that I do. You see, Jay Smithley is deaf. He never heard a word this guy was saying. The guy is cussing him out, and Jay's think he's complimenting his shot. So the guy's cussing him out, and Jay's going, thanks, appreciate it. He hits another good shot, and the guy is like, he just sees the guy's lips are moving, and he's cussing him out, and Jay's like, I appreciate that, thanks, man. And this is inciting him to more anger. He doesn't know what to do. And on that day, Jay Smithley won 6-3, 6-2. Now, I have to give it to this guy. He went up, shook Jay's hand, went over to his bag, got out a Sharpie, and circled Jay's name. Whatever God has given us, whatever gift, whatever skill, whatever spiritual gift, we are to use it to serve God and others. Number 6, service is a pathway to becoming like Christ. You see, service forms us. It shapes humility. It deepens compassion. It aligns us with Jesus. Foster again writes this: the discipline of service brings us into the deep waters of humility. What's the principle? Service is how God transforms us into Christ's likeness. The application: measure your life by Christ's likeness, not recognition. Remember, on the final night before the cross, Jesus took a towel and washed the disciples' feet. Hours later, he took a cross and gave his life. The towel was not separate from the cross. It was preparation for it. A life of hidden service prepares us for a life of sacrificial obedience. And whether that's on a global stage like Eric Liddell or in unseen places, the call is the same. Take the towel and give your life away in service to God and to others. So where is God calling you to serve? Ponder these questions. What would it look like to pursue greatness through serving? What hidden place is he inviting you into today? What gift have you been holding back that you can be serving others through that gift? What would it look like to serve God in everything we do? So this week, choose one hidden act of service. Use one gift intentionally and serve as if you are serving Christ himself.